It's the first week of November, and that means that it's time for the new 2021.11 Home Assistant release. For those that aren't aware, the Home Assistant developers release new updates on the first Wednesday of every month, and they're named by the year and month in which they're released. So the 2021.11 release is the November release because November is the 11th month. Let's take a look at what's inside.
Hey home automation guy. Start the show.
We're going to start the conversation talking about Tuya. In the previous 2021.10 update, a new Tuya integration was released that took advantage of their new set of APIs. Alongside this, we were told that the old Tuya integration was going to go away in 2 releases' time, which meant December. Unfortunately, a lot of Home Assistant users had trouble with this new integration, and it also didn't cover all of the Tuya devices, such as covers. In this release, the Home Assistant developers, especially Frank, invested a lot of time to improve this new integration to bring it up to the standard that they're happy with. The new integration is now much better and supports a ton of Tuya devices such as sensors, curtains, blinds, vacuum cleaners, and cameras. Not every Tuya device is supported, but a lot more than in the previous release. If you had some issues with the Tuya integration in the last update, let us know in the comments below if they're now fixed. Either way, it shows that the Home Assistant team really care about the community and work hard to make sure that we all have a great and stable experience. Up next, we have a bug fix that impacted some people when they switched from daylight savings time. In some cases, the time change caused the Home Assistant to crash or lock up. This bug has now been fixed, so if you were affected by it, you can be sure that it won't happen again. If your region hasn't yet transitioned between summer and winter time, then I highly recommend that you upgrade now to prevent this bug from impacting you. This next update is something I didn't know that I needed, but now that I know about it, I can see myself using it all the time. You know how your smart devices often have a web interface that you can access via the IP address to configure them? Do you ever forget what that IP address is and therefore can't remember how to access these UIs? Well, now you can click a link directly on the device page in Home Assistant to be taken to the web interface for that device. So far, over 50 integrations have already added support for this feature, including Tasmota, Synology, Plex, and Pi-hole, with more coming soon. Here you can see the link on my Sonos device, which loads up the IP address for the Sonos user interface. This is going to be a great time saver if you've got a lot of smart devices connected via IP. If you've been using Home Assistant for a while, you'll have noticed that devices are now creating more and more entities, which allow us to create powerful automations and get more information about our devices. All of these entities used to get published to your default Lovelace dashboards, and if you're using Home Assistant Cloud, these would get exposed to Google or Amazon smart assistants as well. This made things quite cluttered, and usually for no real purpose. From this update onwards, these are broken out into primary and non-primary entities. Primary entities are the main thing that device is meant to do. In this case, act as a switch. And these entities are put by default on dashboards and exposed to smart assistants. Non-primary entities are hidden by default, but you can still add them manually if you want to. Because of this change in behavior, this is considered a breaking change, as it may affect some of your dashboards and smart assistant controls, so keep an eye out for that. So far, over 60 integrations have added support for this, including Sonos, Z-Wave, TP-Link, Philips Hue, and more. Hopefully this will get added to my Aqara and Sonos sensors soon too. This next update is another cool feature that I didn't know I needed in my life. You can now pick an icon for your entity directly from an icon picker in the UI. No longer do you need to Google the list of MDI icons, try and find one that works for you, and then copy and paste it into the entity dialog box. You can now simply start typing in the icon box and pick one from the list. This 2021.11 release contains a bunch of these user experience improvements and is no doubt the work of Matthias de Baart, the user experience designer that Nabukasa recently hired to work full-time on the Home Assistant project. It's little things like this that will help increase the adoption of Home Assistant by normal people, so you no longer need to be a nerd like me to set it up and to use it. In fact, I'm trying my hardest to get my mum and dad set up on Home Assistant for their house, and these types of improvements will help them out dramatically. Thank you, Matthias. The Home Assistant developers did put in some nice updates for us nerds though, by adding a few new template filters. They've added a Today At function, which helps you compare dates and times in template triggers and conditions, as well as some extra functions to work with device areas. These will be useful for advanced users doing fancy things. As always, there are a load more noteworthy changes in this release that didn't quite warrant their own section. I highly recommend that you go to the official blog post, which I've linked in the description below, to see if any of them apply to you. A few callouts for me are the fact that automation and script debug traces are stored between reboots, so you can now troubleshoot what happened in an automation even after the device has been reset. Support has been added for WebRTC camera streams, which means you can now use the new Nest battery cameras and doorbells with Home Assistant. And WLED now supports sliders to control the speed and intensity of lights. This release also comes with one new integration, which is for look-in smart remote controls. Just like every update, this version introduces some breaking changes. These are things that have changed in Home Assistant that may break some of the scripts or automations you're using. I highly recommend that you look at the official blog post, linked in the description, to see if any of them apply to integrations that you're currently using. Some callouts from me are the Amazon and Google Smart Assistant changes that I mentioned earlier, with some entities no longer being exposed by default. I also want to mention that Open Z-Wave is no longer going to be supported, so if you're using Z-Wave, you need to switch to the new Z-Wave JS integration. And finally, Xiaomi Mio, who make my robot vacuum cleaner, have moved some information from attributes into their own dedicated sensors. So if you're using these attributes in automations to detect whether or not the mop is attached, or if some sensors need cleaning, then you'll need to update these automations to use these new sensors. So there we have it, another awesome update from the Home Assistant team. What's your favorite part of the release? Let us know in the comments below. If you're new to my channel and you're interested in how you can use Home Assistant to get the most out of your smart home, then check out these videos, which show you how you can use different sensors and devices to really automate your home. If you found this video useful, then please give it a thumbs up to let me know. And why not click the subscribe button so you're notified when I release a new video? That way, together, we can make your home smarter.